Denim Couch Podcast. Ooh, oh, oh. Ooh, oh, oh.
The 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s with Steph with an F.
Hi guys, welcome to the Denim Couch Podcast, where we chill on this denim couch and talk about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I'm Stephanie Tanner. Welcome. Hey guys, it's Stephanie Tanner with the Denim Couch Podcast. And this week's interview is with Jake Thompson. And I just wanted to start off this interview by saying how much I am grateful for the people that have been willing to interview. It is such a pleasure getting to chat with them, and I feel like I have just learned so much, and I really enjoy these stories. I could listen to them all the time. They are great stories that I've never heard before, and I'm getting to talk to so many awesome people, and I'm just really thankful that they are willing to do this for me and all of the listeners. So want to give a big shout out to all of the listeners, as well as all of those who have been willing to tell me about their lives and stories and experiences from back in the day. And so I have known Jake, who I actually call Coach or Mr. Thompson, because he was my teacher growing up and my coach, of course, and he is such a wonderful man. I am so glad he was willing to do this interview, and he has taught me a lot over the years. I want to say he got me through college or prepared me for college, and he is retiring this year, and so I definitely want to celebrate the amount of time he has spent teaching youth and helping them grow and learn and become the people they have become. He is amazing. I can't praise him enough. His life is pretty cool. As we'll go into the interview, you'll see what his life revolved around, and I think the way he tells his story is unique and encompassing, and I think he has a lot of cool things to say about the 70s that definitely encompass a big part of what the 70s truly was like. So I'm excited to dive into this. Here we go. And my first question for you is, can you tell me a little bit more about your name?
Not very common. Throughout grade school and even into high school, there were literally no Jakes. It's far more common now. I would say 20 years ago, you started seeing that name pop up a lot, but in the 70s and in the 80s, Jake was kind of an old country ranch farm name. You didn't see it a lot, and probably going clear back to like the 30s, and then it started popping back up in the probably right as soon as the millennium turned. You started seeing a lot more Jakes.
What was life like back in the 70s?
Well, again, I was a kid in the 70s, junior high mostly. I started high school, obviously, at the end of the 1970s. It was easier, I think, to be a kid then. There was nothing like social media. The pressures were not the same. We had far more freedom, I think, to do the things we wanted to do. Parents were not nearly as concerned about, well, if you're out, what's going to happen? So as kids, we could run pretty free. The high school and even junior high was far different. I think we get this mindset that, well, things are so easy on kids today. Not at all. I mean, to be in junior high and high school in the 70s couldn't have been, in my mind, much easier. The academics were simple. The teachers were basically one of two things. They were either really new teachers. Education hadn't really started to change a whole lot. The whole idea of testing and having quantitative methods to try to measure out what a kid knows, that was all just beginning. A Nation at Risk, which was a book that came out that was talking about how undereducated American youth was sort of the driving force of that, well, what are we going to do about this? That we have this whole generation of kids that seemingly know nothing. And I think there was some truth to that, because you had this old school group of teachers that started probably like in the late 1940s, and by the 1970s, they were just absolutely just doing their time. And you knew who they were. If you took their classes, you were not really doing much. And then you had this new generation of teachers who were coming in with these ideas of trying to find teaching methods that would measure what a kid actually knows. But I don't think any of those two groups were really connecting with kids very well. And so I don't think that you started seeing the pressures of being a student and having to test well. And for example, taking the SAT back then, you just took it. It didn't matter how you did on it. Obviously, if you're going to try to go to a major university or something, it did. But if you were going to attend Eastern Oregon State or Western Oregon State, we'll just take the SAT. It was a placement exam more than it was an exam to determine whether you were going to get into college or not get into college. So those kinds of pressures just weren't there in the 1970s and early 1980s. And then, as far as going out, getting away from your parents or whatever, they didn't know where you were going. You didn't have a phone on you. They couldn't contact you. So, if you told your parents that, it's 5 o'clock, it's Friday night, I'm going out with my friends, your curfew is 11 o'clock. Well, between 5 and 11 o'clock, they had no idea what you were doing or where you were at or who you were with. And there was no way of them finding out that unless they followed you around. Very different today. Basically they have tracking devices on kids. They know exactly where you're at and what you're doing and who you're with. And, the idea of, kids getting caught on social media today doing things and sending out information online that is really damaging to them. There was nothing like that. Nobody found out about anything. Unless you wanted them to. And I think that, when you see the levels of anxiety and depression and all the things that are on the rise, I think a ton of that is because of the pressures that kids, even now down to 10 and 11 years old or under, that just weren't there then. You didn't have to worry about those kinds of things.
What did you do for fun in the 70s?
I was in a very faith-based family. The church was the center of everything, but I was the second to the youngest kid out of 7 siblings. So once you've gone through, you go down the line a bit, and it's, they get it now. They understand that you don't have to be a part of every single aspect of their life. And my family was split because I was a child of divorce. So I had only one real sister, and that was the only kid younger than me. And so all the siblings that were above me were being, highly disciplined by the patriarch and family, where his relationship to me was almost non-existent until I became an athlete. And then he was more like, he was my coach. So by the time I was 13, 14, and I was kind of moving away from that faith-based kind of atmosphere, they just sort of let me. For me, like my senior year, my stepdad got a new job, and so they moved away from Oregon City, and they left it up to me. They said, hey, if you want to come, great. If you don't, stay in Oregon City. You can live with your stepsister. She's going to Clackamas Community College, get a 2-bedroom apartment, stay here.
That's awesome.
Obviously, what am I going to do? I go, then I'm staying here. As I moved through education and primarily literature and reading a lot, began to dominate my life, other than sports.
Yeah.
And so from really from 5th grade through my sophomore year in high school, was really all just sports. That's what we did. I mean, we played all the time. I was a 3-sport athlete until then, and that, I mean, it just encompassed everything. My summer, well, except for the summers when I would go back to Missouri, that was different because now I was on a dairy farm and I was working with my dad, and that was a different world. But other than that, 3 or 4 weeks, the rest of the time was, I was either playing football, I was playing basketball, I was playing Little League baseball, and eventually running track. Later into high school, the typical high school things begin to happen. You get into a relationship, and you know how those first relationships are. It's all encompassing. You feel like you're totally in love with somebody, and it's puppy love. You're totally infatuated, and you don't really understand it because your brain's not really ready for it yet. You have a heck of a lot more freedom. So freedom when you're 15, 16, 17 comes with some irresponsibility. The party scene, it's the 70s, which was really different. Today you have to be really careful. I mean, if you're caught with anything, it's a serious offense. Well, then it was, pour it out, give us that, go home, become dazed and confused. That really hit it. I mean, and you're going to watch if you watch the film, you're going to go, oh man, that's just decadent. I mean, the excesses and so on were incredible, and I think we paid the price for it. A lot of people did. I mean, there was a ton of addiction. There was obviously the breakdown in marriage, all the stuff that came with it. But at the time, you thought, well, we're just having a heck of a good time. That was part of it. It was a great time, but I think a lot of us paid the price in some ways.
Interesting.
And it took time to either get out of it or not. And a lot of my friends never really did. I mean, they're still struggling today with, it's part of the world that we live in. And I think the world prior to that probably was more familiar with what, you really work hard to keep the family together through all the difficulty and problems that might be a part of it. That in the long run, that might be better than, unless it's like super abusive or something, but
yeah,
that might be better than just going, this isn't working, let's just get out of it. Unfortunately, in the 70s and 80s, that's what began to happen.
What were some popular activities?
I guess it depended. Obviously, in my family, it was so centered around the church that unless we were playing sports, and my stepdad was obviously a coach, unless that was going on, everything was kind of centered around the church, and the activities were associated with that. So there was an organization called Athletes in Action that arose, which was a Christian-based athletic program that my parents were, really into and pushing us hard to get involved with. At that time in schools, they wouldn't block that. You could, Athletes in Action could be a part of the everyday school day. So like you'd come to school, if you were part of Athletes in Action, you would go and meet in the morning and be a part of all of that. So for my family, that's what it was. For my friends' families, social clubs, the JCs, the Elks, the Lions, they were generally involved in something like that. There were a lot of card nights, poker nights, Brits nights.
Do you have any favorite memories from the 70s?
Oh, I think probably the memories I have, we moved every 2 years. So I didn't make a lot of close friendships until really high school.
Okay.
So from third grade until I was in high school, I moved every 2 years. Most of my favorite memories, are more associated again with athletics, playing, the teammates I had, the successes and failures that we had, and that's become such a huge part of my life. I've pretty much dedicated my life to teaching and coaching. So I loved being in the gym. I loved being around athletes. I played through my junior year in college. I didn't play my senior year. As I was out of college, I was coaching. I think maybe 4 years or so, 4 years I've not coached. Those are the memories that really shaped me.
What was the style like back in the 70s?
Bad. Fashion was really bad. And we thought it was really cool, but it was horrible. From skin tight, flared bell bottom jeans, which are all coming back now, silk velour, terry cloth shirts, just bad fashion. Really, some of the worst fashion probably in mankind. Even what you had in your home was really tacky. From shag carpeting to really egregious, horrible wallpapering and paneling, bizarre, bad colors. In some ways, it was like a bad hallucinogenic drug trip in your households. We were stuck in between the era of, the long hair of the late 60s and the early 70s to the really ridiculous blow-dried, feathered look of the early 80s.
What made you happy back in the 70s?
Even though I wasn't super studious, I read a ton. So I think that world, the world of literature, was, I guess, unique. It was different from many of my other friends. They were always, you always got a book, you're always reading. I go, well, that's kind of what I like to do, even all the way through college, even though I maybe wasn't achieving as at a high level as I could have. That was always a huge part of it. So, yeah, sports was big, but I think as I moved into my 20s, learning and just becoming an adult was bringing me a lot of satisfaction, a lot of happiness.
Were you ever scared, unhappy, or anxious?
I don't really think so. We were removed enough from the fear of I was right at the end of the whole duck and cover, we're going to get killed by nuclear weapons thing.
Yeah.
Early on when I was in grade school, we did those things. But by the time I was like a fifth grader, sixth grader, so mid-70s, that had all stopped. That we weren't really that concerned about that. I think my fears really early on were moving from a rural country family of, mom, dad, and a sister to the anxiety of moving into a new family with 5 new brothers and sisters. And that for, maybe a year or so was really difficult.
What brings you peace or calmness during hard times?
The family that I'm in now, the Muse family and us and everything that's associated with that has been fantastic. The stability of, I was thinking about, they were going to ask me to do the graduation speech, and now we don't know, what's going to happen to graduation. But I grew up in such a strange, unstable situation, kind of, moving every 2 years, and to go from that kind of atmosphere to one in which I've stayed in the same small community, isolated small community, for 32 years. That's been my sanctuary. This classroom, this school, everything that's associated with this community and my family. So that's the center of my happiness now, is the family, the community, being involved in the school. That's all been a great journey. We met in college. I went 5 years, so it was sort of junior, senior year, I guess. But we dated for about a year, and it was kind of like, I think this is the one. And she saw through the veneer, I think, the hair and the lifestyle and so on, and our interests were similar as far as where we were going to go. She was going to be a teacher. I was going to teach. So we hit it off pretty early on, and 32 years later, we're still together.
So after interviewing Jake, it's really cool to see that in his interview, when we talk about his 70s stories, and a lot of that seems to have shaped him to do what he now does today. Obviously, the experiences that you have growing up and in the time period that you grew up have a big impact on who you become and who you are and where you choose to go. I really enjoyed his interview. I love all the unique things every one of my guests has to say. I love the huge impact he has had on many people I know and the small community that I grew up in. This week, I've been also thinking about compassion towards just everyone at this time. And we're all struggling with one thing or another. In the current situation, there's job loss, healthcare, livelihood changes, just struggling with balancing work and homeschooling or adjusting to the new situation, and illness. And I have seen so many different people go through so many different things. And I've been thinking and reading about how each of us is going through a struggle, and instead of taking a hard line or opinion or pointing blame or looking at the negative side of things, it's so important to extend compassion and to love these people and to look at the positives and the good things that are going on and look outwards to see what we can do personally to serve these other people who need it. And I've seen a lot of this lately. I've seen a lot of people build each other up and extend compassion and give words of comfort, and makes me really happy. And I've been thinking about it a lot. So I just wanted to share that a little thought with you all. I hope you have a wonderful week. Good luck with everything. I will be back next week. So I will talk to you then. Bye. Wait. You can't miss the embarrassing story of the week. No. Okay. It's that time. It's Steph with an F's embarrassing story of the week. Oh, this week's embarrassing story. It happened earlier this week, and it truly was interesting. Pretty quick story. I walked into my room holding my computer, must have been a little disoriented. My computer was by my face. I don't remember why, and the door was partially open. I ended up clotheslining myself with my computer through my door. I couldn't reenact it. I have no idea how or why I was in that position, but it happened and it hurt. And that's my embarrassing story for the week. So I hope you all, once again, have a wonderful week. Talk to you later. Bye.
If you came here for mental health help, please go visit your doctor. If you're looking for some mental health tips, Dr. Daniel Amen is someone I follow. I love what he has to say and offer. I think his website is brainhealthassessment.com, and he just has some awesome checklist items that go over brain health habits that you should be doing to have better brain health. I want to say there's like 5 to 10 items, and if you have those, if you're working on those habits and trying to improve them to improve your brain health, you'll also improve your happiness level, because brain health equals mental health. So keep your brains happy and healthy, and check out Dr. Daniel Amen. This is not sponsored. I just really like what he has to say, and I think it's really beneficial. I think it can help a lot of people. It's actually very matter of fact, kind of obvious, but yeah, we neglect so many of these habits daily, and I do feel like, if you're feeling unhappy, that may be one of the reasons you're unhappy, because you're neglecting your brain health, which is also your mental health, and trying to improve these habits could really help. So check him out. If you have any stories from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, please get in contact with me. Let's chat. I want nothing more than to chat about the past. I want nothing more than to chat about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. If you have any specific questions that I'm not asking that you would like to know about these eras while interviewing these people, please let me know. I would love some advice and I would love your input. So, what would you guys like to know?